Alright guys, we have a ton, and I mean a ton, of news to talk about today. Not only did the NFL schedule release officially, so we know the date and times of our matchups, but obviously there's a ton of draft news we have to get through, and obviously the rumors are really heating up before draft day. So this first news story, not really related to the draft or the schedule, it's kind of an off the road story here. Dolphins signed tight end Gavin Escobar. The Dolphins announced that they have signed tight end Gavin Escobar. Escobar became available last week when he was cut by the Browns. Escobar, 27, never lived up to his second-round draft status. With the Cowboys in 4 seasons with Dallas, he managed just 30 receptions for 333 receiving yards. He inked a minimum salary benefit contract with the Chiefs in March of 2017, but did not make the final cut. He later hooked on the Ravens, but he did not record an official statistic in his 2 games with the club. The Dolphins did not re-sign tight ends Julius Thomas and Anthony Fasano, and both players remain on the open market. As it stands, Escobar will look to fight for a roster spot in a group that includes A.J. Derby, Marquise Gray, and Thomas Durante. So, my opinion on this is the Dolphins need to draft a tight end. The good news, if you're a tight end guy, when you really want the Dolphins to draft a tight end, there's a lot of rumors that Mark Andrews is going to slide to the 3rd round. Will it happen? Probably not. I don't really see that happening. I think he's a very talented player. He's not as athletic as I thought he would test out to be, but he's still a really good route runner. He's still on tape consistently got open. I know he played in a great scheme in Oklahoma, but there were times where it was man to man, and he just had to lose his guy, and he did that. He did that against corners. He did that against linebackers. He did it against fast guys, slow guys, and he did it against everybody. He's a really good receiving tight end, and I think he would fit perfectly in a Miami Dolphins uniform. And I think that would be a great place to pick a high end tight end is the 3rd round. I think he's a really good receiving tight end. He's not a good inline blocker, and his athletic attributes are probably the lowest when you talk about the top 5 tight ends in this draft. You talk about Ian Thomas, Mike Gesicki, Goddard, Hayden Hurst. All of those guys are probably more athletically gifted, but I don't think they're as polished, I guess you could say, even though Dallas Goedert, he did it against lower competition. Mark Andrews did it against higher competition, so I think that would probably be the only thing separating them, but Mark has probably the best hands out of any of these tight ends in the draft. I mean, he didn't drop a whole lot at the University of Oklahoma, and I think, again, I think he would fit. So if he did slide to the 3rd round, then I would love to pick him. And he's not a developmental guy. I'm getting way off topic here, but he's not a developmental guy like some of these other tight ends are. I feel like Ian Thomas is more of a developmental guy. I feel like it's more of like a Walford type of a deal, and I really don't want to get into that situation. Next news story is Albert Breer, on the Miami Dolphins and some of the rumors that are going through the pipeline. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins say they have the ammo to get into the top six of the NFL draft. If you guys watched the pre-draft press meeting, this is exactly what they said. So if you guys want more draft details on the Dolphins, you guys should go watch that video. It's very interesting stuff. The Dolphins say they have ammo to get into the top 6, which is a literal quote from Chris Greer and Mike Tannenbaum. If there is a player they like, but Breer gets the sense that Miami probably won't deal up for any of this year's top quarterbacks. If they stand at 11, Breer believes that UCLA's Josh Rosen is the most likely single caller to fall to them. Of course, Miami has holes to fill elsewhere, so a Ryan Tannehill successor alternate isn't necessarily a top priority. This is obviously his opinion, more or less than it is rumors, but the reason I read that to you is because they did say, the Dolphins say that they have ammo to trade up. And there were other things that they said, I can't remember, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to give you false facts here, but there are other interesting things that they said about quarterbacks in this draft, how they love certain guys and they love their competitiveness. Mike Tannenbaum and Chris Greer said that there are multiple quarterbacks in this draft that they feel like can start right away and are going to have successful NFL careers. So that alone is very intriguing. If your front office believes that, and there have been rumors the entire draft cycle that your front office is interested in quarterbacks, and they literally flat out said that, I don't think that's a smokescreen. I think that's legitimate, and the fact that they both share that opinion of this year's quarterbacks, not to mention Adam Gase has been rumored to be heavily watching tape of this year's quarterback class. So I think all of those things combined makes it for a very interesting draft day, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds on Thursday. Should the Dolphins select quarterback Lamar Jackson? This is the next news story. It's not much of a news story as it is just an opinion. It's unclear whether the Dolphins will be targeting quarterback with the number 11 overall pick or if they will trade up to land a single caller. But Florida Football Insider offers its view as why the Miami Dolphins should pick Louisville's quarterback Lamar Jackson. Now, the reason I threw this one in here is because I thought it was an interesting point. Lamar Jackson could also be at play at the number 11 spot. I don't think he's falling out of the first round. Before, I thought he was going to. I thought there was a really good chance we would have a Geno Smith situation on our hands, and he would not go day one. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think his draft stock has went way up for some reason. You just hear a lot more buzz around the NFL in articles and team articles and beat writer articles and stuff of that nature. How a lot of teams are interested in him. So I think his value has shot way up since the combine. Which after that combine, I really thought his value was down, especially how Josh Allen performed. So I don't think he's fallen out of the first round. So the Dolphins could consider it at 11, but I do think there are much better players that are going to be there, like Derwin James, Roquan Smith, and Tremaine Edmonds and stuff of that nature. I just don't think Mika Fitzpatrick, Denzel Ward could be there. So I think there are better players there. So you would definitely be reaching a little bit. So you could trade down and then trade up again, which sounds crazy if you think somebody's going to take him. But if that was what the Dolphins were, I highly doubt the Dolphins are targeting Lamar Jackson in the first round. But if he somehow fell to round 2, I would not be surprised if the Dolphins made a run at him. But I don't think they will in round 1. This next news story is just not really anything. The Dolphins have new jerseys. If you guys want to go check that out on their Instagram, you can. They look really nice. I still don't think the 2012 jersey is still my favorite, and we only wore them for 1 year. But those were seriously just classy jerseys, and I honestly don't know why that fell through. This next news story. Which top quarterback prospect is most likely to fall to the Dolphins at the number 11th overall pick? Or the number 11 overall pick. This comes from the Bleacher Report. They have Josh Rosen being the most likely Miami Dolphins quarterback. They think he can go from the number 3 overall pick to the 12th overall pick in this year's draft. One of the top quarterbacks, this again comes from Bleacher Report, is the hardest range to predict. Rosen is a beautiful passer, but he frequently dealt with injuries in college and has rubbed some the wrong way off the field. Those concerns add up to make him the quarterback most likely to slide on draft day. There is a scenario where Rosen is the Jets' pick at the number 3 overall pick, even they haven't been directly linked to him by any of the NFL sources. The same goes for a team like the Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills, or New England Patriots attempting to move up for Rosen should he slide past the number 5 overall pick. The floor for him is pick number 12, where the Bills are on the clock and they need a quarterback. Despite what this says, there have been a lot of rumors that Adam Gase loves Josh Rosen. Now, I don't know if that could be a complete lie, but you have heard over the last month, really. There was an article. It would be hard for me to find it, and I couldn't find it to put it in this podcast because it is very interesting, though. Where I can't remember if it was the Fin Fanatic or Sun Sentinel or the Miami Herald. I can't remember, but it was a great article, and it said that Adam Gase was quote obsessed. Or he didn't say, I don't know if that was a quote from Adam, but it was a quote from somebody about Josh Rosen and how he was watching a lot of his tape. So if that's true, which it could be a complete lie, then that could be something that the Dolphins want to do at that pick. And we'll see. We'll see. I think the Josh Rosen thing and the Jay Cutler comparison is a little bit overblown. I do think he is weird. He's not normally the guy, he's not Brett Favre, you know what I'm saying? He's not even Peyton Manning. I love how a lot of people are like, well, Peyton Manning asked why. Well, Peyton Manning was a down-to-earth dude. You could just see it in him. Eli, there's certain quarterbacks in the NFL that you're like, man, he's just a little bit, he would be less fun to play with. Eli Manning's a little shut off. He seems like a little bit more shut off and shy, more than some of these other quarterbacks who really take on that leadership role and love it, like a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, and you just want to follow that guy. I think that's the thing that Josh Rosen lax. I don't think he has this Jay Cutler, oh, my talent is everything. I don't have to listen to anybody because I can do it better than anybody. All that kind of stuff. I don't think he's that way. But I do think he is a little weird. He's just not. When I say that, he's just not the prototypical. He's different from a lot of the other guys that have come through here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the NFL obviously thinks that's a bad thing. Because you have to be just like everybody else that came before you, or there's something wrong with you. Okay, so let's go into this next news story. This comes from the Palm Beach Post. Inside the Miami Dolphins draft process, for making picks. Now, this is very interesting stuff. While Vice President Mike Tannenbaum and General Manager Chris Grier sat in the Dolphins auditorium giving the vaguest possible answers about their plans for next week's NFL draft, Adam Gase was locked into an office upstairs, shuffling film of probable picks. Grier is the head man for the team's draft organization, a logical role from him after 20-plus years in college scouting, and Tannenbaum gives his input as well. Gase enters the process around mid-February, though he attended the Senior Bowl to watch quarterbacks Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen in January this year, and helps nail down the selection when Miami whistles down its options as the slot approaches. Whittles down, excuse me, I don't know why I said whistles. This is a quote from Chris Grier. He said, quote, "Everyone always wants to know who's making the final call, but the three of us work great together. You'll always have 2 or 3 guys you like, and you make the decision on whoever fits best." Obviously, this is still Chris Grier. We don't know what's going to happen at the number 11 overall pick, but we've talked through trade possibilities, who might be there and who might not be there. For us, the big thing is the communication and talking about what we think is best for the Dolphins. Adam Gase plays a big role. Mike and I have to get players that he wants and that he feels fits the scheme, offensively or defensively. Grier technically gets the ultimate say on who the team picks, but all 3 men maintain there is rarely, if ever, disagreement about who to take. Gase gives input, but defers to Grier's expertise. Now, I want to point out something. That's not necessarily true. Because I understand where this guy is coming from, whoever wrote this from the Palm Beach Post, but the quote is different, and I do believe he said we try to find. Adam Gase has a preference for who he likes to plug in and play in his offense and defense. They go out and find those players. So it all comes back to Adam Gase. Adam Gase is the engine. They didn't say, "Oh, we picked the players we feel my vision or Chris Grier's vision or Mike." No, it's Adam Gase's vision. So it all comes back to Adam, which I think is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I trust Adam's expertise more than I do Mike's or Chris's, because I think he has a better track record than those guys in terms of winning football games and being successful. So I'm not necessarily worried about that, but I actually like that way of doing it. I think the head coach needs to have. He needs to have all the chances to be successful, and I think that's a big part of it. The draft starts next Thursday with the first round, where the Dolphins currently have the 11th overall pick. Mike Tannenbaum is open to trading up or down if a big trade opportunity emerges. So, if a trade opportunity emerges, he's willing to go up or down. Miami picks with the 42nd overall pick in the second round and the 73rd pick in the third round Friday. Then it has 2 4th-rounders, a 6th, and a 2 7ths Saturday. This is Tannenbaum's, Grier's, and Gase's 3rd draft together. And Gase describes it as an easy process a year ago. He said when the Dolphins are 3 picks away, they typically have 5 players under consideration and have them pre-ranked in an order of priority. Last year, as their 22nd overall pick in the year, they targeted Missouri's defensive end Charles Harris first and Florida's linebacker Jared Davis second. Davis went 21st to the Lions, allowing Harris to fall into Miami's lap. Quote, "When the pick's coming up, we'll start getting together and looking at the board and seeing who's there," Grier said. "Most of the decisions have been made by Monday or Tuesday when we all have an idea, but there's always a wrench that gets thrown in from someone on draft day. Gase likes to work systematically on his part of the draft preparation, and usually asks for 5 players the scouting department recommends at a particular position so he can review them and give his opinion. I think this is a flawless way to do it. I think this is a great process, and I think it's a better alternative than just giving the head coach all of those duties, because I feel like everybody's working together and they understand what they have to do to make Adam successful, and and it feels like everybody's bought in, which I like. It doesn't feel like one guy has one big ego or nothing. It feels like they're all in it to win it, and they understand the process that they've been dealt, and they understand their job, and it feels like they're all doing it pretty well. I think the last 2 drafts have been pretty dang good. I mean, last year's draft had a lot of surprises in it, and it gave us a lot of starters, and I can't wait to see Raekwon McMillan back, and Cordrea's progression as a player, and Charles Harris's progression as a player. And the 2016 draft class has been pretty good for us as well. I think we've gotten 2 Pro Bowlers out of that draft. When you talk about Laremy Tunsil and Kenyon Drake, I think both of them will eventually make a Pro Bowl in their career, and I think possibly this year. I think there's a great chance with Laremy going into his second season as a left tackle, and then obviously Kenyon Drake, who it looks like he's going to get the majority of the snaps as the starter, but I do think we're going to have other running backs in the mix as well. So very interesting stuff. Like I said, I like that way of thinking, and I like that philosophy. I think it's a good one. Alright. Next news story comes from Pro Football Talk. Dolphins think they could make a move up for a quarterback if they choose. The Dolphins still have confidence in quarterback Ryan Tannehill, but they have been open about looking at the top prospects in this year's draft, and if they need to move up to get one, they think they have the ability to do so. Via Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald, Dolphins general manager Chris Grier said they had the ammunition to move up into the top 6 if they choose to. I think there is, Grier replied, if they have the ability to move up from the 11th overall pick. I think you can always make a deal to move up. It all depends, this is Chris Grier, this is a quote, on how much you want to give up. You see some deals with some teams. We may think that they gave up a lot to get there. And there are other times you're like, wow, they didn't give up enough. If teams want to move up or down, depending on what they want to do. We had a situation here in the past where we made a trade in the first round, and it really didn't give up a lot. Didn't really give up a ton for a player. He's talking about Deion Jordan. And at the end of the day, I think you can move up and down fairly easily, but you also still need someone to want the player or move out of that spot. So again, very interesting stuff from our front office going into this draft. And we'll see how it shakes out. That Deion Jordan thing, I know people, obviously, it's deserved. Deion Jordan was a terrible pick, and we probably needed to do a lot more work on his psychological psyche going into the NFL, because obviously it wasn't very good, and he wasn't very dedicated as a player. But his talent and his tape at Oregon was insane. I mean, he looked like he was the next, freak player, generational talent. I'm not even joking around. He looked like he was going to be a great NFL player, but yeah, he ruined that. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Miami Dolphins likely to pick up Devontae Parker's 5th-year option. The Dolphins are likely to pick up Devontae Parker's 5th-year option because it makes too much sense not to, which is an interesting statement. Teams usually exercise the option in cases where the player is not a total bust, and despite what you may think about Parker, he's not a bust, at least not yet. If, as the Daily Dolphin believes will happen, Parker's 5th-year option is exercised and will be about $9.5 million. The Dolphins have made this move official as early as January 1st, but have chosen to wait and now must do so prior to May 3rd. The money would be guaranteed for Parker only in the event of injury. Otherwise, Miami could walk away with no penalty. This is the same scenario Miami faced with tackle Juwan James, and the Dolphins picked up and kept his rights. The way the 5th-year option is structured, it is totally in the best interest of the club. Parker's cap hit this year is around $3.5 million, placing him as the 60th highest paid receiver in the league, according to Spotrac. If Parker were to fulfill his potential this season, stay healthy, and maybe even make a Pro Bowl, it would have been nearsighted to not exercise the option to keep him on the roster for a 5th season. Even if the Dolphins decided they could not come to a long-term extension and wanted to trade him, at least they would retain his rights and thus the option to receive something in value for the former first-round pick. So that's obviously interesting stuff. I think Devontae Parker has completely let me down. If you guys have watched my content for a while, you know that I've hyped him up a lot because I really do believe in his talent, and I do believe he is capable of being a dominant threat, and we've seen that he's capable of doing it. He's just the most inconsistent player, if not the most inconsistent player on our team. And inconsistent is actually giving him props. There are times where he will literally disappear for 4 games. It's not like he has a great game one game and then in the next game he's a no-show. It's like this guy literally can disappear for a month, and he did that last season. So I don't know what Devontae Parker needs. He is a super talented player. Maybe him being I don't want to say the number 1 receiver, but he is the best big time X receiver we have, who's capable of doing things like dominating a game. He's capable of doing that. So now that he's going to get more targets and more chances and more plays called for him, I hope he rises to the occasion. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. I mean, if he doesn't do anything this year, obviously it's going to be the end of our relationship with him. But he has been even me saying he's been an utter disappointment. He had over 600 receiving yards last season, but for a first-round pick, that's not good enough, obviously. Especially since he is so talented. People forget he is a super talented player. So we'll see what happens. I still believe in his talent. We'll see what happens, but we'll see. This comes from Pro Football Talk. Will Bills or Dolphins jump Jets for Baker Mayfield? It's been nearly a month since Pro Football Talk explained that the league insiders suspect the Jets will be taking quarterback Baker Mayfield with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. With the selection process only 4 days away, the lingering belief is the Jets will make a beeline for Mayfield raises a separate question. Will the Bills or Dolphins make a move to the 2nd overall pick with the Giants in order to grab him first? The Bills have been trying in recent weeks to push back against the widespread belief that the Bills are destined to move up into the top 5 to pick a quarterback, possibly because they realize that making the move will require major draft capital. Once the Giants are on the clock, however, it will be time for the Bills and Giants to move toward their bottom line positions, and either a deal will happen or it won't. The Dolphins become a factor in those decisions as well. If the mutual interest between Mayfield and Miami prompts an effort to make a move for the 2017 Heisman winner, then there's a possibility that the Jets will become sufficiently concerned about getting leapfrogged to the finish line. After previously jumping from 6 to 3 by making a deal with the Browns for the 1st overall pick, if that's what they're saying is, if we leapfrog them, then they might leapfrog us, is what they're saying. If the Jets want Mayfield, the Browns could move down 2 spots and be guaranteed to get either Josh Allen or Sam Darnold at the 3rd overall pick, and to claim whoever they get with the 3rd overall pick who would have been at the 1st overall pick. It's very confusing. So basically, what they're saying is the Browns could trade down with the Jets, and then the Jets would get the 1st overall pick and pick Mayfield. Why would they do that? I don't know. That's stupid. I think they would pick Sam Darnold. So that wouldn't happen either way. Because, yeah, that's not happening. That's very confusing, but it's not happening. And I can tell you something right now, we're not trading with the Giants. And if we did that, I would lose my mind. Because there is no way that is happening. I do not think the Dolphins are going to do that unless the deal is so good. I don't know what we would give up for that, man. I honestly don't know what we would give up for that. And I don't know if we're willing to give up basically 2 first-round picks for Baker Mayfield. Are we that sold on Baker Mayfield? And I'm not even asking that as a front office. I'm asking you, the fans. Do you think, and you can leave this down in the comment section below, do you think Baker Mayfield is worth 2 first-round picks? Because if it comes to that, I don't think the Dolphins are gonna attempt that at all. This next news story is not a news story. It's more of a fun thing I wanted to go through because the draft is right around the corner. 10 worst draft picks in Miami Dolphins history. Let's see here. Number 10, Jason Allen, 2006, the 16th overall pick in the draft. This comes from, if you guys want to go read this yourself, Palm Beach New Times. Again, Jason Allen, the 16th overall pick in the 2006 NFL Draft. Super amazing football genius Nick Saban was now in his second year as the man in charge of the Dolphins. After Wayne, I cannot pronounce his name, convinced Mrs. Saban that Miami wasn't such a scary place and has nice players to shop. In his second and final draft with the Dolphins, the man that is lauded as the secondary, I don't know what the heck that means, selected Allen, who is a sort of a hybrid corner slash safety slash kick returner with the actual skill set of none of those things. Super amazing football genius Nick Saban bombed in selecting a player from the one position he knows best about, and even then ran away to Alabama to go yell at college kids because the NFL was too much for him. It's good point. Yeah, that was a terrible pick. I have no opinion that I agree with that. That was a god-awful pick. Number 9, John Avery. The 1998 29, and he was the 29th. Well, he was the 29th overall pick in the draft. Can we calm down a little bit? Apparently, Jimmy Johnson left all of his and that's a great point. Jimmy had great late round picks. He didn't really have great first round picks. Apparently, Jimmy Johnson left all of his draft day superpowers on fishing boat somewhere where he came to the Dolphins from the Cowboys, because holy balls, John Avery, who the Dolphins could have had instead of John Avery with that pick. They could have had Hines Ward or Amon Green. Yeah, that's not a good decision. I like Hines Ward. Amon Green was kind of, I don't know. I feel like Amon Green really didn't last. He's a better pick than John Avery. Doesn't matter. The 8th worst pick in the Miami Dolphins history, John Beck, 2007, the 40th overall pick. Oh God, I don't even want to read that. I'm thinking of skipping this one. When coming out of BYU, Beck was actually compared to Drew Brees and Steve Young by some draft experts, because apparently all you need to be a Hall of Fame Super Bowl winning quarterback is to be short, white, and a Mormon. It's not. This is his words, not mine. Whoever wrote this. Beck was brought into a quarterback-starved team, and a quarterback-starved fan base immediately thought he was their heir apparent to Dan Marino, and we just threw up in our pants writing this. I agree with him. I mean, that was not a good pick. John Bosa. This is a good one. Obviously, father of Joey Bosa. This is why Dan Marino never could have a team. Okay? This is exactly the reason right here. I don't know why we just went brain dead after Dan Marino, because Don Shula did a tremendous job of assembling our team in the 1970s. I don't know what happened in the 80s, even though we went to 2 Super Bowls in the 80s. I guess really what happened after the mid-80s, I should say, because we did go to 2 Super Bowls. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. John Bosa, he was the 16th overall pick in the 1987 draft. All right. Let's just put it. He makes a good point. Let's just put it out there at the risk of supreme blasphemy. One of the main reasons Dan Marino never got to a Super Bowl or never won a Super Bowl was because Don Shula failed him as a drafter. That's what I was just saying. Bosa is Exhibit A in the crap your franchise record-breaking Hall of Fame quarterback directly in the mouth with a bad draft pick. Bosa was a defensive end from Boston College who was supposed to come in and anchor a failing defense to help Miami's supernova offense in 3 seasons with Miami. Bosa finished with 7 total sacks, effectively kicking Marino's chances at a ring with the proverbial sacks. Yeah, I mean there were more picks like that. Sadly, this. I would make an argument that this is the worst one, but it is a later round pick. But this is a pretty bad one. I don't even think this is a first round pick. Pat White. This is not. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, if we're saying worst first round picks, I don't know if we would count this one. Number 6, Pat White, 2009, the 44th overall pick. Remember when Bill Parcells was brought here as the grand savior of salvation because he makes mean faces and won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, even though he didn't pick the player, but is given credit for it anyway? Remember when he was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Anyway, something Bill Parcells is a genius, something Pat White. Yeah, he's right, Pat White. Pat, the fact that we as a fan base had to deal with Pat White for a season is disgusting. Pat White is one of the worst players I have ever seen. You could watch him play and say, you do not belong here. And I cannot believe he convinced the franchise to draft him that high. Coming up the number 5 slot, the 5th worst draft pick in Dolphins history, Ted Ginn Jr. Ted Ginn and the Ted Ginn family. This is Cam Cameron's, oh my god, I haven't heard that name in a while. Cam Cameron's lasting legacy with the Miami Dolphins. At a time when Zach Thomas was retiring and the team had multiple needs. Sound familiar? Cameron's inexplicably used a top 10 pick on a punt returner because his family was super nice. Oh my god. And while many clamored for the Fins to select Brady Quinn, thank God we didn't. It was the whiffling linebacker Patrick Willis that set the team back yet another decade. And while Cam will be remembered for many arduous things in his tenure with the Fins, none will stand out more than this draft day speech when he tries to explain that Ginn picked Dolphins fans by revealing what a supreme derpy doofus he is. God bless this man, because he's right. I mean, I can't, but was Patrick Willis? Oh, he wasn't. I thought Ted Ginn was a later overall pick. I forgot he was the 9th overall pick in that draft, dude. I completely forgot about that. Alright, this next... Oh, God. The 4th worst draft pick in Dolphins history. Eddie Moore. 2003. He was the 49th... Again, technically not a first-round pick, but... The 49th overall pick. We're going to keep moving here because I'm not really going to count that. Jamar Fletcher. 2001. The 26th overall pick. As bad as the Moore pick was... it still wasn't worse than this move. Not only was Fletcher a bad selection, the draft tends to be one big crapshoot anyway. He was the kind of selection that wrecks a franchise for years and years. With a dire need at quarterback following Marino's retirement and a perfectly good future Hall of Fame quarterback for Purdue named Drew Brees sitting there, waiting to be selected, instead, we went with Fletcher, and essentially, the Dolphins' chances at being awesome for decades went with it. God dang it, man. That was good. Number 2, Eric Kumerow? I don't know how to say this name. It's Qumerow. I don't know how to say a lot of foreign names. Or, I don't know, is Eric from... No, Eric's from here. He's an American. Anyway, Exhibit B, this is the 2nd worst pick in the draft. This was in 1988. He was the 16th overall pick. Exhibit B in the crap your franchise record-breaking Hall of Fame quarterback directly in the mouth with bad draft picks. In 1988, Don Shula wanted to shore up a defense to complement his record-obliterating offense led by the right arm of God, a.k.a. Dan Marino. He tried to fix the mess he made by selecting defensive end John Bosa a year earlier by doing the exact same thing. The following year, in taking what Eric here, was an absolute bust, and while getting stronger at defense was a priority, Marino also needed a strong running game. Sitting there, waiting to be selected, future Hall of Fame running back Thurman Thomas, who went to the Bills instead, Marino would never get a shot at getting an all-world runner again because, well, the Dolphins. With the worst pick in franchise history also comes in the 80s. Dude, we actually had to try not to win a Super Bowl with Dan Marino. That's how stupid we are. The worst draft pick in NFL or in Dolphins franchise history, Sammy Smith, 1989, the 9th overall pick. Did we mention that Don Shula screwed Marino with his draft picks? Did we also mention that Marino never had a great running back? Yes and yes. Which brings us to the Fins' absolute worst draft pick of all time, Sammy effing Smith. He was selected with the 9th overall pick to be the yin to Marino's yang. In a Super Bowl caliber offense, Marino was wrecking the record books left and right, but couldn't get back to the big game because he had no running game. Enter Smith, who came in with the highest expectations and proceeded to spray old lady diarrhea all over everyone's hopes and dreams by having a career that featured more fumbles than touchdowns. He averaged 3.7 yards a carry and never rushed for more than 830 yards in a single season. But that makes Sammy the worst ever. That's not what makes Sammy the worst ever. But two plays. The fumbles in 1991, prospective Super Bowl caliber Dolphins lost two painstakingly close games thanks to Sammy fumbling going into the end zone for the go-ahead touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Once against the Chiefs and then against the Oilers the following Sunday. The Fins slapped to an 8-8 season, and the police had to escort Smith from Joe Robbie Stadium because, well, Dolphins. That was a really good list, and it was well written. This was written by Chris Joseph. Have to give him his credit on that. That was really funny and really, really good. I like that a lot. This next news story, after we just went through the worst draft picks in Dolphins history, comes from the Miami Herald. Dolphins' 2018 schedule isn't daunting. It's a chance for Mike Tannenbaum and Adam Gase to save their jobs. I don't want to read this entire thing. I just wanted to read before we got into the NFL schedule because we're about to. I wanted to read this stat. I think I can remember it. But the stat was in that article. I think there's a stretch where we played 9 out of our 10 games. There's a stretch of games that weren't playoff teams before. I guess since we're going to go through the schedule right here anyway, we'll figure that out. But I think that was a stat, which is interesting. So this is the official 2018 Miami Dolphins NFL schedule, in case you guys don't know. The home opener is at home against the Tennessee Titans, which should be a great game. Now that Mike Mularkey has been fired and is no longer their head coach, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of style this team has, because the style before was like our Achilles heel. We really struggled to stop the run, and we still haven't proven that we are able to do so. And obviously Sue is gone now, so that matchup looks even worse now on paper. But we'll see, because I still don't know how the play calling is going to go down. But Marcus Mariota, this is a great first test for this defense to show that we have improved athletically, and we are able to contain an athletic quarterback, because that has been something that we have struggled with over the last decade. And Tyrod Taylor, I think, only lost 2 games against us his entire career as a Buffalo Bill. So there you go. All right. Then our second game is very similar to last year's second game. The Miami Dolphins will travel to the New York Jets. Very interesting stuff, especially if the Jets select Baker Mayfield. It'd be very interesting, whoever the Jets pick as their quarterback. You know, this, to preview it a little bit, just a quick run through of it, it's going to be interesting to see how the offense stands up against this young Jets secondary, which is pretty decent. Obviously, they signed Morris Claiborne, they signed Tremaine Johnson the last couple off seasons. They drafted Marcus May out of Florida, Jamal Adams out of LSU, so that secondary is looking pretty nice. We'll see what happens. Their front seven is a lot weaker than it was a year ago, or over the last few years, with Sheldon Richardson now being a Viking, and obviously Muhammad Wilkerson, he is now a Packer. So the front seven is going to be easier to run on, but that secondary is definitely improving. So that should be a challenge for us. Even though Tannehill, hopefully he's healthy, has a great record against the Jets away. Then the Oakland Raiders travel to Hard Rock Stadium. That's an interesting game. If John Gruden is like, we're going to go smash mouth whatever the heck John Gruden came into the league, I think it was the late 90s. Maybe it was the early 2000s. I can't remember. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, yeah, if he goes back to smash mouth football, it looks like he will. That's an interesting matchup as well, because the Raiders have a really good offensive line, and Derek Carr is a good enough quarterback where he can carry his team to a victory. The last thing we need to worry about is the running game as well. So hopefully, again, our run defense is ready for the challenge. And in the third game of the season, the Dolphins will travel to the New England Patriots. I'm glad we're getting that game out of the way early because I'm sick and tired of playing that game in December. It's so stupid. It's ridiculous. We're blessed to not have to deal with that in December. Thank God. Even though the Patriots are looking a little bit weaker, it's very hard to go up into Gillette Stadium and win anything, and that goes for everybody in the NFL, not just all the teams in the AFC East. Everybody who goes up there, except the Carolina Panthers last season, gets the hands. So we got to calm down a little bit. The Miami Dolphins will travel to the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 4. And again, I'm not predicting anything. I'm just telling you guys what we would have to worry about in these particular games. But a quick rundown of this game. I would say the overall balance in this game, because last time we played him, we had no balance. Tannehill was just taking sacks left and right, and our defense couldn't do anything. And that was in 2016. Our team is way different than it was in 2016 now. It's completely different. So that should be an interesting game. They have a strong defense. Their secondary is actually one of the more underrated secondaries. I wouldn't say their safeties are all that great, but their corners are pretty good with William Jackson and Drake Kirkpatrick and Adam Jones. So, and they obviously have Geno Smith rushing the passer with Michael Johnson and Chris Dunlap. So their defense isn't terrible. So that should be an interesting game. The next game, this is Week 5, the Chicago Bears at the Miami Dolphins. So finally, we're going back home after well, no, not really. I guess it was just a 2-game stretch of being on the road. The Bears come to Dolphins land. That should be an interesting game. Actually, let me look at this list. Okay, so that, to me, is the easiest game we've had since the start of the season, because the Chicago Bears, even after all their acquisitions and stuff, and their defense is up and coming, and they've really tried to do a lot to help Mitchell Trubisky, I don't feel like that team is going to be any good at all. Actually, it's going to be an interesting test again, because they're going to bring a running game, and that's something that they did very well last year, unless stuff changes and they become more of a passing team, because obviously their new head coach comes from that Andy Reid tree. Who knows? But they have a really good running back tandem with Tyreek Cohen, Jordan Howard, that could really give us a lot of trouble. So that would probably be the main thing. I'm not worried about Trubisky. What week are we on now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, in Week 7, Matthew Stafford and his Detroit Lions will travel to Hard Rock Stadium. So back-to-back home games, that's pretty nice. Obviously, the thing that we're going to have to worry about, not really Matt Patricia, but he's familiar with us, obviously, coaching in New England all the years that he did. Is Stafford. Stafford is a great player, and when you talk about somebody who carries a franchise, he is the definition of that. When you look at the dictionary, you look carrying a franchise, Matthew Stafford is there, waving at you, so with a big old smile. So yeah, Stafford will be an issue in that game. They don't really have a ton of great weapons. It reminds me of when Dan Marino played, and I know that's blasphemy, especially in the Dolphins podcast. I'm not comparing Stafford to Dan. They do have a lot of similarities, though. They both carried a franchise, even though Dan Marino won a lot more games than Stafford did at this point in his career. They just don't have a ton of weapons around him. Marvin Jones is okay. Gold Tate's great. He's a great slot. I'm not taking anything away from him. The running game is non-existent. Their offensive line play is very inconsistent. I think he'd be taken advantage of. So I think the biggest thing we have to worry about is their Stafford. This next game is the Dolphins are traveling. They're going on the road again after a 2-game home vacation. Are going on the road to take on the Houston Texans. I think this is a Thursday night game, by the way. It's a primetime game. So that should be fun. And by the way, if I didn't mention any of the other games are primetime games, because they're not. So if there are primetime games, I'll let you guys know. And I don't know if this is a Thursday night game. Yeah, this is a Thursday night game against the Houston Texans. So that should be fun. Obviously, J.J. Watt, if healthy, Whitney Merciless, Jadeveon Clowney. That defense is ridiculously good up front on that D-line, but the secondary is atrocious. I mean, they would have to have an all-world draft to fix it. I don't think you can fix that in one fell swoop, but Romeo Crennel runs a pretty tight ship up there. They have a pretty decent defense. Their offense scores a ton of points with Bill O'Brien, so it's going to be interesting. That'll be an interesting game. Deshaun Watson's obviously the public enemy number 1 in that game. And in what week are we in? Week 1, Week 2, Week 3, Week 4, Week 5, Week 6, Week 7, Week 8, Week 9, we're in Week 9. It's the Jets and the Dolphins. They're coming to to us. Again, I think Tannehill. These AFC East games this year are going to be huge. Really are going to be huge. We got to own the division, and I think we have a good chance of doing that as long as we don't turn the ball over. And whoever their quarterback is, that's going to be interesting. Josh McCown played pretty well against us. We just have to score points and keep the clock moving. But again, that secondary is very good, and hopefully we have a good performance at home. Week 11, I think. Is it week 11? Yeah, it's week 11. No, I think it's week 10. I'm not going to count again. You guys would know. I have a terrible memory. Let's see here. In the next week, the Dolphins will go on the road to face Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So we're getting into the final month of the season. This is the playoff stretch. Let's see here. I think we're in November right now, so stuff's getting a little hairy. That's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers going up to Green Bay. That's going to be a daunting task. Very daunting task. The Dolphins will travel to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. I don't think Andrew Luck has ever had to come down to Miami, which is interesting. But that's a classic. That used to be a rivalry back in the day, believe it or not. You know, Tannehill, if you go back and watch the tape, Tannehill was actually 1-1 against Andrew Luck, and in both games, it was really fun. It was like a really fun game to watch. So both of them came down to the wire. So it should be a fun game. The Colts are terrible. I'm just going to let you guys know that right now. The Colts are terrible. Then, rounding out November, the Bills will take on the Dolphins at home. So the first game we're going to play against them, and I'll count here because this is an important game. So hang on. What week are we in? Week 1, week 2. Hang on, see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hang on. Messed up. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're in week 10. Against the Bills. So that's at home. So that's an interesting game. No Tyrod Taylor, as you hear clap in the background, because thank God we don't have to face him anymore. I'm not even joking around. That was the single reason we lost those games. And obviously the Jay Cutler turnovers, but that's a non-factor. Tyrod Taylor abused us, like literally. We were his creeping stomping grounds, for God's sake. So now that he's gone, hallelujah. And we really don't know who the Bills quarterback is going to be, and they're not going to get a high-end one. And right now, A.J. McCarron looks like he's going to be the starter. So, get out the hands. Get out the hands, because I think we're going to, hopefully, because I really want to. I hate the Bills. New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins in week 11, I want to say. Hang on, are we in the month of December here? No, this is the last game of November. Or, no, this started December. Excuse me, yeah. No, this is the second game of December, I'm crazy. And then this is obviously a home game in December, which should be great. This is the fourth, we only have 4 more games, including this one. So this is going to be an interesting game. We always typically take care of business at home. And obviously, Gronk could retire, hopefully. So we don't know what this roster is going to look like, but I like our chances in that game. And then in the next game, we take on the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins. And that is going to be a road game. That's going to be very, very interesting. Very tough defense, all-around great defense, great secondary, great front seven. It's going to be a very interesting game. I'm more worried about their I think their offense got a whole lot worse. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are a really good combo, but other than that, they really don't have any weapons on off. I mean, Dalvin Cook. I totally forgot about Dalvin Cook, but their offensive line is not very good. So we'll see what happens in that game. And then for the second to last game of the season, the Jacksonville Jaguars will travel to Miami to take on the Miami Dolphins. That's going to be a fun game. Fun game. I think that game is going to be close. I think that game is going to be a defensive battle as long as we can control the run. And hopefully at this point we'll know if our run defense is improved, because it's the second to last game of the year. So, and then the last game of the season, the Miami Dolphins will take on the Buffalo Bills on the road. It's going to be a tough task, but no Tyrod Taylor. So you know what that means. Hopefully we're going to get out the hands. So I would say the one common theme in this schedule is we better bring some run defense, because there are some key games where we're going to need it. The Raiders game, we're going to need it. The Titans game, we're going to need it. The Bears game, we're going to need it. The Jaguars game, we're gonna need it. The Vikings game, we're gonna need it. So that's, I think, that's almost half of our schedule where we're playing teams with really good running games. And if I didn't mention the Titans game as well, we're gonna need it in week 1. So hopefully, the common theme here to me is hopefully our linebacker situation has been fixed, because it's gonna need to be if we're gonna have a successful 2018 NFL season. So that's the thing I took away from the schedule. What did you guys take away from the schedule? And that is going to be it, guys, for this podcast. We went through a ton of stuff, a ton of draft rumors, a ton of smoke screens, hopefully, or actually not hopefully. I hope some of these are true. I hope some of them aren't true, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.